Hello. Today for the small group discussion 2, we're going to discuss some parts of the Code of Ethics out of the CRCC manual as well as the ACA. The first one that I would like to discuss is Code A.4 out of the CRCC Code of Ethics, which involves avoiding value imposition, which basically is we as counselors projecting our own personal thoughts and opinions onto the client, and that is it's bad practice, but it's a very easy trap to fall into. In fact, it's so easy we may not even know that we're doing it. You can do it with your tone of voice in responding to a question, nonverbal cues such as maybe crossing your arms at a certain point when, although you're not saying anything, that would indicate that maybe you're not in agreement with what's being communicated. So it's important to pay attention to your body language and your nonverbal clues. It's important to stay neutral, but regardless of where the discussion goes, it's important to stay on path. It's incredibly easy to get off on a rabbit trail in a discussion, but especially in this setting, it's very important to let the client speak and give voice to their ideas and their feelings, but always be capable and willing to redirect back to where we're trying to go. And adding your own personal thoughts and beliefs, really, it adds no value to this particular process, and in fact could end up doing damage to the relationship that you have with your client. So it's important that you be self-aware of not only what you're saying, but how you're saying it. And pay attention to, even outside of the office, try to be aware of, are you imposing your own values in certain situations, be it social gatherings or other types of get-togethers, and be aware of how you are projecting your thoughts and ideas. And also too, keep in mind, if you do have a social media account such as Facebook, you have access to it to see it, and your clients do as well. So I would caution you about posting anything on there that would maybe lead them to believe that you feel differently about something or a particular group of people or a particular culture than you're actually saying. So just be aware of that. And also, in this environment, we may often be seen as experts or authority figures, and that is not the case. But the setting tends to lend itself towards that, because you think about your desk and how you are depending on what side of the desk you're on. So, keep that in mind, because we don't want to feel like the client feels like anything that we're saying or doing is being imposed on them. This is not an attempt to change them or their thoughts or their ideas. It's a process that helps us to help themselves to get where they're wanting to go. So we just need to be careful there and be aware of how you may be perceived from that side of the desk. Okay? And again, we just want to guide and assist them. We do not want to change them. So the second code is A.2.C and is the ACA Code of Ethics, Developmental and Cultural Sensitivity. Now, this code, in my opinion, really concentrated on communication breakdowns due to language barriers, where in some instances that a interpreter or translator should be involved. But I see it as much more broad than that. Not to say that is not certainly true, because it is, but there's another aspect of that I think that could be missed. And that is the education levels of some of our clients, what they've been experienced to. The English language, like every other language, has 5 different registers, which goes from very formal to very casual. Your formal register uses complete sentences, uses a very large vocabulary, and you see it used in businesses, schools, that kind of thing. And if your client has not been exposed to those environments, even though you're speaking the same language, they may not really be comprehending what you're saying. So keep that in mind. Now, the other end of that spectrum is the casual register. Utilizes phrases and incomplete sentences and uses a very small bank of words, and relies heavily on nonverbal clues. So for an example, say you're observing a conversation from a distance, so you're unable to actually hear what's being said. If it was a formal discussion, you would have no idea what the conversation was about, anything really. I mean, just two people talking. But if you notice a conversation in a casual register from a distance, you could tell immediately if it was an angry conversation, if they were happy to be having that conversation, because it relies very heavily on nonverbal clues. So, and one more, back up. It's going to be important that we are able to adjust our style of communication to meet the client where they are in regards to speaking and communicating verbally with them. And just as an example, here's a good clue for you. If you have your client in the office for your initial visit and they're explaining kind of what their situation is, and you give them the floor and you say, tell me what's going on. Pay attention, because if they are more accustomed to communicating in the casual register, they will start the story at the middle or the end and eventually get back to the beginning. If they're accustomed to using the formal register, the story will begin at the beginning and go chronologically and end at obviously the end. So that's just kind of a good hint. The final code that I would like to discuss is code B.1 out of the ACA Code of Ethics. Multicultural and diversity considerations. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading my writing. To me, honestly, this is common sense. If you're really open and honest about things. Because if you have time to prepare and your clients from a different culture that you are not familiar with, it's your job to get yourself as prepared as you can. But you're never going to know everything there is to know about that particular culture, by reading some articles and some books. You have to be completely upfront and honest with them about what you don't know. And don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if the answers to those questions are going to help you communicate with your client better and move the process along smoothly without throwing up any flags or offending anyone. So just being open and honest and not afraid to ask questions is probably a key component of that particular code. Although you read it, it's got a lot of big words in there. But if you break it down, the client is different than you. Please be polite and understanding and ask questions. Privacy is very highly valued with a lot of cultures, but it's defined differently in different cultures. And so your idea of sign this, you're giving me permission to release this information to this person and this person. Really take the time and make sure that they understand what information is being released, who it's going to be released to, when it's going to be released, and why it's going to be released. And make sure that they are okay with every aspect of that. Okay? It's just a brief conversation. But it can save you a lot of headache and possibly hard feelings later down the road. So, just in closing, be aware of self and how you, if you filter your thoughts in your words in the proper way. So anyway, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.